All right, thank you, Lotte. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And in a special way, I want now to give a warm welcome to all our attendees. We were able to join just a couple minutes before you so that to make sure that the stage is set for you and feel most welcome. This actually is a very important event. It's the first ever regional network of African road safety legislators and Africa chapter of road safety NGOs, the first ever dialogue organized, and we hope that it is just the beginning. So it's a very important event in the calendar of the Africa chapter of the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. And since we launched the Africa chapter in 2018, and Lotte will talk more about that in a little while. But I wanted just to make sure that we know that we are together in terms of what is our sort of objective for today. And basically what we are looking at is trying to align the efforts by the regional network of African road safety legislators and the efforts of African NGOs for road safety in their efforts to really build a stronger working relationship as well as together driving the road safety action in Africa. So this will be a dialogue, a debate, a conversation where I think our main aim will be to look at very, very local contextualized issues and very, very specific issues that can really build that relationship between the civil society and the government. And we are very happy to be represented by legislators as well as the NGO group. So I will not, before we go to the session, I would like to give a chance to some few people to make opening remarks so that we can, they can set the stage for us. And this, of course, they have been instrumental in planning for this event. And I'll start by welcoming Evelyn from WHO, and who will also followed by Lotte from the Global Alliance. Evelyn, welcome.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone. I do hope that you're all well and healthy wherever you are. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this important dialogue. Especially thank you to the members of parliament who have signed on and have committed to sharing their experiences in working with NGOs. So this is the first dialogue between the African Regional Network for Road Safety Legislators and the NGO chapter, African chapter. We all know that Africa has one of the world's highest, in fact, the world's highest death rates, road traffic death rates. And so we know why we're here. Both parliamentarians and NGOs are key partners to strong policy action in countries in order to reduce road traffic fatalities. Parliamentarians are crucial to ensuring that policies are in place to meet best practices and that they're enforced. Through their budget-making authority, they are also responsible for providing funding for implementation of these best practices, as well as for monitoring and holding governments accountable for road safety in countries. NGOs, of course, also play a very crucial role in holding MPs accountable, as well as government agencies through strong advocacy, especially advocating for best practices and their implementation, as well as the resources needed to implement them. Patrick has already mentioned the purpose of this dialogue, but just to emphasize, this is the first of such dialogues. And the idea is really for NGOs and parliamentarians to share the challenges and opportunities in working together to address the road traffic injury burden on the continent. So we do hope that through this dialogue, through this very first dialogue, that this will provide a first step to carving a strategic direction, but not only that, but also to develop strong and concrete action steps that can contribute to reducing the road traffic toll on the continent in Africa. So a very big welcome. I'm very excited to listen to the conversation, as well as to look forward to the way forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Evelyn. Also, it's good to have you. And I'll now take this chance to welcome Lotte to make her few remarks. Welcome, Lotte.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And Liz, if you could get my slide up there. So I just also want to echo Evelyn's welcome to all of you, and thank you very much to the parliamentarians, the African Legislators Forum, as well as the NGOs here to this first dialogue that that we have organized. And we are very excited about this because of the magnitude of things that we can do together. The Alliance, a couple of years back in 2018, established a chapter of the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety in Africa. And this is supposed to be followed by chapters all over the world in the different regions. And the first one we have established is the one in Africa, as a pilot and as a check of how we can do this. Currently, we have 70 member NGOs in Africa in 28 countries. There are 54 countries in Africa, so we're not there yet, but we are aiming at growing this network and getting a much stronger NGO participation and NGO voice from this network. Some of the activities that and plans we have for the Africa chapter is that we really would like to grow the network. So webinars like this is also an opportunity to spread the word about the work that we're doing, and also for NGOs who are not yet a member of the Alliance to become a member of this network. We also want to connect and empower NGOs, and we do that through trainings, membership, mentorships, and grants. We have a lot of trainings, and we're really hoping that as many NGOs as possible are benefiting from these things. We're doing campaigning, and we're trying to publish the views of civil society, of the NGOs, and data around the work that we are doing, establish partnerships with different entities, and one of them is the Legislators Group, which we are very excited about and very hopeful that this can develop into a partnership and also an outline of how civil society and legislators can work together. So this session today is really the first step on that avenue to address how can we work together, what are some of the challenges that we, both of us, face in working with each other, what are some of the challenges that the legislators are finding working with NGOs, and what are some of the challenges the NGOs are finding working with the legislators, but also some of the opportunities that we both see for working together. And then we also hope that we will outline some specific areas of collaboration that we can take forward. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much for participating with your questions. And thank you very much for all our panelists for joining us. I just want to say a last thing also. Thank you to Tawia Addo-Ashong from the World Bank, who will listen very carefully to all the things that we're saying, and she will summarize and make a summary of what has been said. And this will serve as a summary and also as we'll put it into a document that will go on our website and be shared so that we know what has been sort of talked about today. So thank you very much to all of you for being here, and looking forward to this interesting next hour. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lotte. And I can see people are still streaming in, and those who have missed the first part, not much, but you are still most welcome. Feel at home, so to speak. Right now, I want to give a quick overview of how this discussion will run, so that we are all on the same page and we know what to expect. Now, during the registration process for the event, we were able to collect questions, comments from you, and we were able to work with these responses and feedback to shape the discussion along sort of 4 themes. So we have 4-part questions that will guide our discussion today. And one, of course, will be about the general experience of interaction between NGOs and the government. and the second will be the challenges, and the third will be exploring possible solutions, and finally trying to forge the way forward. So this will be the 4 parts of our discussion today. But we are quite very lucky and very honored to have a panel of delegates drawn from both sides, the legislators and from the NGO side. So the 4 delegates will help to shape our discussion, and we have asked them to actually try to move towards a very concrete, as we say, and very specific issues that we can actually take action on. So I will not spend a lot of time on this. I would like to say that after every part of the question that is the key question to the panelists, we shall have a chance from attendees to ask questions, and we shall be working on the chat to look at the questions, and 5 minutes of asking questions after every stage of the discussion. And therefore, without much further ado, I'll not mention their names. I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us the first key question that we want to hear or to ask is, in their work as the legislators and in your work as road safety NGOs, have you had interactions or engagement with each other? For the legislators, give us some instances or areas or circumstances where you have engaged or collaborated with NGOs for road safety, and what your experience has been like or was like. And for the NGOs, you'll do the vice versa. You tell us in about 2 minutes, have you had any instances that you have interacted or engaged with the legislators, and what was your experience like? Based on that, I would like to begin by introducing the first panelist, Honorable Member of Parliament from Uganda, who will tell us his name, his work, and then answer the first key question to start us. And this will be followed by a bright Oywaya from the NGO, and then we shall go to the next set of panelists. So begin now. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for inviting me. Actually, I've just had the break from the campaigns. We have elections just in the corner in the next 1.5 months. So I just called it off to be on this very important panel because I'm very passionate about road safety of our citizens in Uganda and Africa. And I'm happy that this initiative has taken course to share the experience. I've been the chair, and I'm still the chair for this term of Parliamentary Forum for Road Safety, Alex Ruhunda. I come from a beautiful city, Fort Portal, tourism city of Uganda. And I've been at the forefront of road safety as a result of so many accidents that have costed us very important human capital. I had my mentor then, the late Father Albert Ruhanda, who was a very big brain in the development arena. I had Professor Mujaju, who was a professor at the university, and many others who just died just out of recklessness and carelessness, and also people not being mindful when they are on the roads. I know the issues of the roads, a lot of these gadgets, equipments, vehicles that we use from the Western world, the culture is not well embedded with us, and the usage of these machines, to me, I have found them very costly to our human life, and I feel that government has really take action to save the citizens, because in the statistics from my country, Uganda, the road accidents are now almost the second killer cause of death to our citizens. And we lose a lot of money, we lose a lot of property, a lot of life, so which we feel as leaders we need to take action. So I took the initiative to begin the Parliamentary Forum for Road Safety, and we have 70 members of parliament who subscribe to this forum. This forum is voluntary. It is not part of the committees of parliament. It is a voluntary association that we feel those members who feel passionate about this cause, they can come together and we do something. So we've worked with some of the NGOs in Uganda, the Oywaya Safeway, providing the leadership, and we have also been working with World Bank to ensure that we get the legislative arm of government respond by coming up with better policies, but also the laws. The gap, we had gaps in the Road Traffic Act, which we amended recently. Now, working with NGOs, from your point, it's been on our side. Fortunately, I come from the civil society side because I founded the Kabarole Research and Resource Center, which has been doing a lot of work with community development. So to me, getting into parliament and establishing a relationship with NGOs was quite easy because I come from that sector and I'm a legislator at that. So we've been working very smoothly in terms of seeing how we can get data, because we must legislate using the statistics to appeal to other members of parliament to respond, and government especially. So the Makerere Institute of Public Health has been extremely useful in providing up-to-date data on the road accidents and what it costs government, and looking at the influx into the major referral hospital, the national referral hospital. And when you reach there, it is very appalling. So the only bit that I can say as a challenge, it has been, of course, when it comes to the government response vis-a-vis the NGOs. NGOs, they have quick fixes, but as government, we go through bureaucratic systems. So somehow that causes a lot of pulling of strings and not moving at the pace that is expected. And especially when it comes to pushing the Ministry of Finance in our country to ensure that in the budget, the issues of safety are given serious attention. That has been a very, very big bottleneck because all the construction of the road network in the country, issues of safety have not been very key. But through the engagement with the civil society, the NGOs, we pushed first of all, for the first time, we got the budget committee of parliament, get the Ministry of Finance, sit with us as a parliamentary forum, and ensure that the key issues that need financing by government are incorporated into the budget. But the process took quite some time because we had to, I did an approach of a think tank within the parliament, getting the parliamentarians on a round table to think through these issues deeply. And it has helped us in Uganda to improve on the laws, but at the same time, get into the budget process, but also force the major Uganda National Road Authority to adopt the safety measures such that every contractor who has to go to be given business must, by all means, include the safety components in the entire plan. So I think I can leave it at that.
Yes, I actually, Honorable Alex Ruhunda, thank you very much. You have put a good comprehensive sort of introduction to who you are and why you are interested and why you are doing what you're doing. I think it will be in the next sections, I think we'll go more into details on those challenges you mentioned, and also to see how you have surmounted them, maybe some case studies, and how you actually are able to involve the NGOs. You have mentioned that you have actually interacted with the NGOs and you are able to push for better financing through the parliament. And I think that's a good thing. I would like we listen to a bit on that. We have another, I think, senator presentation that will be done very quickly by Evelyn from Cameroon. Evelyn?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, again. I will share my screen so you can see the presentation. Thank you very much. Okay. So apologies, this presentation was supposed to be made by Madame Roukayatou from Cameroon. Unfortunately, she is not on the webinar, on the call, so we do hope that she is well. So very quickly, what I wanted to do is to give you a quick history of the networks for road safety legislators, and in particular the activities around the African and regional network. So the Global Network for Road Safety Legislators was actually formed in 2016. It was launched with the support of the FIA Foundation, Towards Zero Foundation, and the World Bank. The idea is to bring together parliamentarians to advocate for policy improvements, for funding, and really to hold government agencies accountable and citizens accountable as well for safety on the roads. The African Regional Network for Road Safety Legislators was the first regional network to be launched right after the Global Network was established. And that was in 2018. And when the Global Network was formed, parliamentarians very quickly realized that there needs to be a greater regional focus, as the best practices need to be very much adapted to the context in the regions. And so the African Regional Network was one of the first to be formed, followed by a regional network in the Eastern Mediterranean in a few months after. And then there are two more, one in the Asia Pacific region, which was formed in 2018, and then in Latin America, Asia Pacific in 2019, as well as the one in Latin America, which was also formed in 2019. There is under discussion currently the possibility for the formation of a regional network in the European region. And in fact, yesterday, the European members of parliament met in a small group to discuss how to move that forward. Next slide, please, Patrick. So the aims of the network are, as I mentioned, advocacy, policy improvement, funding, and really strengthening road safety in general in the countries. So it is very much a voluntary network of members of parliament. It is not a legal entity, and it provides a platform for members of parliament in Africa and similarly for the other regions, serving on both national and regional parliaments, and in some cases subnational entities who are also responsible for road safety strategies, for policies and laws, to be able to set priorities and exchange best practices for road traffic injury prevention that work for the regions. The aim of the network is also to support, obviously, the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals target, which is to halve road traffic deaths by 2030. And then finally, really encourage stronger and active engagement by legislators in the African countries in meeting those targets and goals through global parliamentary bodies, regional parliamentary bodies, friends of road safety groups, such as the one that Mr. Ruhunda has mentioned, as well as through direct advocacy and through social media channels. Next slide, please, Patrick. So since its launch in 2018, and one of the important events and decision-making opportunities was the meeting that was held in Zimbabwe last year, hosted by the World Bank's Sub-Saharan Africa Transport Policy Program. And there was a dialogue between members of parliament, ministers of transport, and other relevant ministries to talk about how to move the agenda forward on the continent. And here are some of the three basically key decision points that consensus that was reached amongst the members of parliament. One was to push for the ratification of the African Union's Road Safety Chapter by at least 15 member states. And the reason is that it would take 15 member states for the chapter to enter into full force. So members of parliament during that meeting committed to moving their governments towards that. Second was to establish a means of communication and collaboration between the members of parliament present, and a WhatsApp group, I'm happy to say, was set up from one of the members of parliament who was present at a meeting from Senegal. So that is currently a very active channel for communication between members of parliament. And finally, in terms of key areas of focus, the members of parliament really decided to focus on 2- and 3-wheel motorized transport safety, and really look at opportunities for regional integration of policies and practices in Africa to be able to move this agenda forward. So I will end now and turn it over to Patrick. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Evelyn. So as you said, we hope Madam Asta Roukayatou is fine. If she'll join us, then she'll, of course, join the panel. But in the meantime, we are well represented. So Honorable Alex Ruhunda, you have a job in front of you in the next few minutes as we try to see that bridging the gap between the NGOs and the legislators. So I'll now give this chance to the panelists from the road safety NGOs, beginning with Bright Oywaya. You tell us again the same question. What areas, instances you have interacted or engaged the legislators, and how your general experience was like. Go ahead, please, Bright.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I must start by saying I'm delighted to be part of this important dialogue. As you heard, my name is Bright Oywaya. I'm the Executive Director of Association for Safe International Road Travel, a road safety NGO that focuses on education, awareness creation, and advocacy. Yes, indeed, in the course of my work, I've been able to interact with legislators. And this has been by way of processing policy and legislation, and very quickly will affirm the important role that legislators play. We know very well that legislation gives you, policy and legislation give you a framework within which action can be taken. We also know that there is an important element that when governments make commitments in road safety, for road safety, you find that working with legislators enables accountability because of their oversight role. And one very, very important aspect is the aspect of budgeting, putting money for road safety in implementation projects. If I may get very specific, my interaction with legislators in my country, I first of all must say that there are various ways of making law in my country. First, it is from the executive. The relevant ministries bring up areas of intervention. It is formed into a bill. It goes to parliament and it's processed. The second way of making law in my country is through popular initiative, where citizens can collect a number of signatures and there's a threshold that is given. And again, whatever issue it is formed into a bill and goes through the process of government. The third way is through private members' bill, and that is where I interacted I've interacted a lot with legislators, where we had an issue from the NGOs perspective. We saw a gap. We worked with NGOs, and I'm happy that Evelyn is here because she had a lot of input in that particular bill that I'm talking about, which is the safety of our children. Went through parliament. So in my work, I had one-on-one interactions with members of parliament, meeting members one by one from different constituencies, those that are interested with children affairs, those that are interested with youth affairs, health, human rights, and the like, transport. Also through oral presentations before the relevant committees of Parliament, also written presentations when called for in the process of making law. And the experience was very interesting and gave me great exposure. First of all, realizing that the processes of making law are very long. This particular process took 3 years. So you must be armed with patience to be able to process law or policy. And I suspect that this is the same with other countries. There's also the issue of prioritization. A process can begin, but the executive has other priorities. You find that road safety is put in the back burner. So that experience caused us to learn a lot. Also understanding the process, the process of making law. I thought I knew the process, but the more you I interacted with the legislatures, I discovered new ways. I discovered that they have this parliamentary staff that you can work with, who are responsible for research, their research work. I interacted a lot with those. So in a nutshell, it was a process of learning. It was a process of an eye-opening process, but most importantly, it's a process that if well handled, is a process that can make a change to the whole framework of in the country, not just in my organization, but if a law passes, then it applies to everyone in the country.
Well, thank you, Bright. Again, very comprehensive, and at least you have highlighted some areas where you have really interacted with the legislators, with the government, and what was the experience like. So, Marshall, I'll come to you back later, but I want to move us to the next stage because we have generally seen that there is a good sort of, there is actually has been interactions, engagement in the past, and actually ongoing between civil society, the road safety NGOs in Africa, and specifically we are talking about the legislators in the regional network, and also the NGOs in the Africa chapter. So we want to move to the next stage. As I had mentioned, we have several honorable members of parliament, and I'll be giving a chance for them to ask a question or follow up. But based on what has been presented or discussed so far, we want to look at now, go more detailed and look at during the interaction with the NGOs or with the legislators. And this is a question coming, starting with Honorable Alex Ruhunda from Uganda, that what specific challenges would you have you identified that are specifically make the engagement between the civil society or the NGOs road safety, even if it's in Uganda or in your experience, and the legislators, that it prevents that relationship to grow stronger and stronger? And we have seen, like in the past, that it's like civil society and the government is like they are not working close together. What would be, or what in your experience, what specific challenges do legislators face while engaging with the civil society? Welcome, Mr. Alex.
Thank you once again, Patrick. As you are aware, the civil society in Africa, and especially relationships between governments and the civil society, it's not been smooth. Because much of the time the civil society focus is on the weaknesses of government. And of course, if someone keeps reminding you about your weaknesses and making a loud noise, then you are not about it. So that is something that we have come to live with. But it is important on our side as government to get constructive criticism that make us act especially on very key, essential, sensitive issues of the public. Now, the road safety, fortunately, is in a docket where it is not engaging with governance. So it is more looking at saving lives. And of course, anybody who comes out with a campaign to save lives cannot be, taken with hostility. And that's why I have to reiterate that our relationship with the civil society organizations in Uganda that are looking at the safety of the citizens, including some members of parliament actually who have died on road crashes. So basically, the major point which we have been I have been illustrating, because I don't want to move into a far-fetched challenge, but on our side in Uganda, we have been very receptive to these causes. We also got on board the Ministry of Works and Transport. We've been working very closely. Then we got on board the university, the Public Institute of Public Health, the Institute of Public Health, which has been handy, and including the referral hospital, which has been the recipient of all these challenges. And this in itself, it made Parliament partner with civil society constructively. So we have not really had these challenges, as you put it. The only issue has been the inconsistency when it comes to funding. Sometimes these NGOs have got a lot of issues with their donors, but that delays some of the plans that we have. I think that is the only issue that I can look at, but the rest, we are open.
Yeah, I think thank you for putting it that way, because I think that's why this dialogue is very important, so that we hear from both sides. And I'm happy that you have not had any, very critical challenges. We shall hear from the NGO side to see what they have to say from where they sit. So allow me, before I put in the NGOs to respond, to give this chance again. If Honorable Esembe and Honorable Asta are here, I would like to give them a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about the work in about 2 minutes, so that we are not back so short of time. Honorable Asta, Honorable Esembe, whichever order you want to introduce yourself, you're welcome.
Thank you, Patrick. And in 2 minutes, we're gonna try. Like I said earlier, I am Esembe, member of the National Assembly of Cameroon and current chair of our network of MPs for road safety. And I'm with Senator Roukayatou Asta Djoulde, who is Secretary General of the network. Now, coming to the question which is pertinent, collaboration in Cameroon between legislators and NGOs, I would say so far is a success story. In my case, particularly, I am just 8 months into my first ever mandate as MP, having been elected just last February. And in April, I was given the privilege to lead this network. So I'm still trying to familiarize myself with a domain I'm so passionate about. But we should note that in Cameroon, the network of MPs for road safety is actually a creation of a leading NGO, Securoute, of Mr. Martial Missimikim, who happens to be on the panel. From what I gathered, it was his idea to prompt MPs in 2018 in Cameroon to come up with this network. And so far, we've been working well. I would think, since we have just 2 minutes and Madam Asta has to also speak, the major challenge I'm trying to work with him and other NGOs for now is to see how we can push the executive of our government to come up with a lead agency. So much of the action, the energy is so dispersed between parliamentarians, executive branches of government, NGOs, And there is a bit in Cameroon, from my own perception, of some cacophony in action. We are hoping we can push our government towards this, while our second priority, as we took over this network, is to make sure that we adhere to the existing international conventions on road safety. It's unfortunate to note that Cameroon is yet to sign up to any of these treaties. I think they're about 13 in number, but we've begun a conversation with our government, and we hope that we'll get to this point in the shortest possible time. Now, I'll allow my colleague to also say a few words.
Yeah, thank you.
Patrick. Moi, c'est Roukayatou Asta Djoulde, sénateur de la République. Et je crois que ça fait 1 an que j'ai eu l'occasion de participer à cette activité au Zimbabwe. Et je tire un coup de chapeau à Madame Evelyn de la Banque mondiale. La sécurité routière au Cameroun, dans le cadre de cette structure-là, regroupe aussi bien les députés que les sénateurs, raison pour laquelle je vais juste faire une introduction en saluant tous les panélistes et laisser le reste de tout ce qui va être dit d'intéressant dans le cadre de la Securoute au Cameroun au président Esembe, qui aura plus d'informations à donner. Et je crois que je constate que je suis pour l'instant le seul panéliste à m'exprimer en français, parce que c'est dans la langue où je peux m'exprimer normalement et me faire comprendre, parce que mon anglais n'est pas fluide comme pour les autres. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Asta. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Esembe. And thank you very much. For those, I know you have listened to the interpretation, and I would like to really thank the legislators part of the panel for those comments and those the ideas that you have brought in. And let's hear from the other side, looking at the challenges that the road safety NGOs in Africa face as they try to engage with the government. What are these challenges, and as specific as possible? So I'm looking at Bright and Marshall to respond to this question. Starting with Marshall, if you're there. Okay, Bright, you can take the floor as we wait for Marshall to connect. Bright.
Thank you very much. As I already indicated, that I work with legislators and I'll continue to work with legislators. In the course of my work, clearly I have come across challenges. One of the major excuse me, one of the major ones that might not be of anyone's doing, but it's a reality, is the high turnover. As I have indicated, making law and legislation and policy takes a very long time. In my own experience, we began with a bill, with a session of parliament. And before we could get even to the tabling of the bill for the first, second, third reading and acceptance, the parliament elections happened, and the champion that was spearheading this particular bill was not re-elected into parliament. So you can imagine, after elections, what we had to do is we had to start afresh, identify a fresh champion, a new champion, and again, create awareness, give information, and the process began. The other challenge is the time that it takes. The processes of parliament are supposed to be fairly predictable, but that is usually on paper. My experience has been that a law can be tabled in parliament and you don't hear of it again for a long time, months, years. Like I said, legislation taking 3 years or 4 years to come to completion. That is a major challenge on the part of NGOs, because if you have a work plan, you can imagine what it is that you're reporting monthly, quarterly, yearly, that you're waiting. And yet the only product you can show is whether a law is passed or whether there's a process that's going on. The other challenge that I have experienced is, of course, perception. And that has been alluded to by our honorable members. You find that before you gain acceptance as an NGO, there is a perception that you're here to criticize, that you're here to point at the mistakes, but as you begin to work and as you begin to have interactions and relationships, you realize that we actually all want the same results. We want safety for our people. We NGOs dealing with grassroots and in grassroots want safety for their people. Members of parliaments who are elected by the constituents want safety for their people. So we actually want the same people. So the issue of perception is something that needs to be highlighted and brought into book. The other issue is priorities that change very quickly depending on what's trending, so to speak. The agenda of the executive always is preeminent, and road safety might not be that priority at that particular time. And again, as NGOs, we work with plans, we work with deliverables, we want to evaluate what it is that has happened in the course of time, the year, the quarter, the month. And so that poses a great challenge. Another challenge would be, this is what I would call personal integrity, in this sense that sometimes NGOs would want to get too close, that the efficiency then is compromised. So drawing lines, being able to draw the lines that you're too close to have an impact, yet not too close to have an impact, yet not too far not to be had. So those are the basic challenges I have had from the legislators, but I also know capacity on the part of NGOs has also been a challenge, having worked with other NGOs in the process of legislation and policy implementation. NGOs, sometimes we lack the capacity, the expertise for policy processes. We don't understand the lawmaking process. So sometimes we get discouraged, and yet it's because we did not know what then we would have expected. So I think those are generally some of the challenges that I have encountered in my work with legislators, and maybe more will come as we continue to interact.
Absolutely. So thank you, Bright. I think I like the way you have shaped it in terms of at least even the honorable members of parliament, the legislators are able to see from your angle, what is it that you find as a challenge as an NGO? And I think this cuts across all the African NGOs in terms of, let's say, the turnover. And maybe at some point in the next session, we shall see how can our legislators guide us into, when there's so much high turnover, how do you keep your agenda moving as we have officers change people now and again? But right now, let's hear a bit of, we are still a bit of the challenges. And maybe I want to ask, is Honorable Esembe, do you have any challenges dealing with road safety NGOs? You said there was no challenge at all, but would you like to respond to what Bright has said in terms of turnover?
Yeah, Patrick, I didn't get the question clear. Could you come again?
Yes, you had said that you're working very well with road safety NGO in Cameroon. Do you want to make any comment on what has been said coming from Kenya, for example, that there's a high turnover of legislators, that you can't finish the agenda before they leave office and then somebody else comes in? Do you have any comment on that?
Well, if I get the question right, yeah, the point is with Parliament and the fact that we come and go based on elections, there is some sort of instability. Like in my case, last year we had elections. The former MP who was head of this network wasn't re-elected. I came in, and I'm still, like I said, trying to familiarize. The luck, not to say that there is no problems with our NGOs, but the luck is that our NGO, especially Securoute in Cameroon, they are the ones who helped MPs to come up with this network. And much of the capacity that we have now as MPs in the network is thanks to our collaboration with the NGOs. It is still too early it's just 8 months for me in Parliament and in this network, so it's still too early to make a global assessment of the collaboration with NGOs in Cameroon. But I'm upbeat. I am positive the way things are going, that we're going to collaborate as much as possible to drive the agenda on this issue, which is costing us not just lives, but also so much property loss in the country.
I think, thank you very much. I would like, Honorable Esembe, as we'll move to the next session, as what you have described, you try to work with us on what would be the solution later on in terms of that challenge that legislators keep changing and the priorities keep changing for governments. How do we keep the agenda moving even when governments change, officials change? We shall look at that just to keep you on the heads up. I want to invite questions from the attendees right now in terms of so far what we have discussed as we move towards the sort of the solution part of all this. But let's hear some views and questions from the attendees. And I'll start with, if you can hear me, Dr. Ahmed Shabaya, introduce yourself and you can ask your question to any member of the panel. Go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick, very much. Yes, I do hear you. And first of all, I'd like to thank you and the Global Alliance led by Lotte and the team for holding this very important webinar. I'd like also to thank my colleagues from NGOs in Africa for always being consistent and always being on the forefront of trying to save lives. But also I would like to salute all the parliamentarians today on the call. This is definitely something that we miss a lot, and I salute you for your brave approach and initiative to be with us. My question, so my foundation is in Egypt, and even though within the WHO distribution, we're not within Afro, but we do consider ourselves, of course, in the African continent. One thing that actually we've encountered and we've been faced a lot as we meet with the African Union is that there's the African Charter for Road Safety that has been in place since 2015. Until now, this charter has not been ratified except by one, maybe maximum 2 countries in Africa. Again, as a sort of representing seriousness and being serious about the issue of road safety and not starting from scratch, why is it that within the parliaments of the different countries in Africa, this charter has not been ratified yet?
Thank you, Ahmed. I think, do you want to respond, Honorable Alex, from your point of view? Okay, Honorable Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, do you have any comment on what Dr. Shabaya is saying?
Well, you know very well that when the heads of states meet, both at the UN and even African Union, there are certain commitments that are made, and they are supposed to be followed up technically by the technical wing of government, because these commitments are political statements that are made, and they are supposed to be captured and then implemented within the country. But sometimes the bureaucrats within the country, they get their own priorities, and you know, unless someone knocks on their doors to remind them, it becomes a very difficult process. So people tend to sleep over these matters, which are very critical, and especially when they also have budget implications. Sometimes the ministry, like of finance in my country, tends to move very slow on some of these commitments. So we need a serious advocacy agenda, and I think some of this must be picked up by our forum, the various forums in the different countries in parliament, and also civil society, because if we do that, I have seen civil society push for the financing of the health sectors, for the financing of the teachers in my country, and some of these pressures, they yield results. So I think that concerted effort would be very useful for us to follow some of these commitments that are being made at that international level.
I think just Dr. Ahmed, if that is the case, again, we are thinking towards solutions as we continue to discuss this and towards the end. If that is the case in terms of budgeting priorities and all that, I give you 30 seconds to respond to what Honorable Alex has said. Ahmed?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Honorable Alex, for clarifying. I think one of the important and significant ways of demonstrating commitment now that charter is already in place, I think starting a process of ratification and starting to at least address some of the needs of those aspects of the charter would be a very good start, and maybe that could be an opportunity within this forum, maybe for yourself and the other honorable members to take lead in your specific country now that we are speaking about the road safety charter that has been again in place more than 6 years ago. It would be great if, as part of the commitment to not necessarily for just the NGOs, but for the public, that charter would at least start in terms of ratifying it and understanding all the needs, whether it's finance or otherwise, maybe suggesting amendments to it or something so that it could be applicable. But at least that could be a very good start and a very good outcome of this webinar. To commit to starting the process of ratification it as soon as possible and to apply it.
Okay, thank you for that, Rujenda. So I think we are moving on well because we are looking at some of the, as you said, as specific as possible, what would be the things that we can start actioning towards and make sure that from the top, bottom, and from top, that we are meeting the NGOs are from the grassroots, they are able to bring awareness or mobilize, and the legislators from the top are also able to meet. And when we meet halfway, I think that's what we are looking for. So already we can see that there are some gaps in terms of engagement between the two sides, and this is what we are trying to bridge. And as we move towards also towards looking at the possible solutions and the way forward, let me now invite again. Bright from Kenya to look into what she has said as the challenges and look at possible solutions and the way forward in terms of especially the key points that we have looked at. We talked about the high turnover, perception, priorities changing. Now we are looking at key issues like the Africa Charter for road safety. What would be the potential solutions and the way forward in this?
Thank you, Patrick. When it comes to the high turnover, I'm not sure that there's anything that from our perspective we can do, because elections have cycles and we know it is a 5-year cycle. So maybe as NGOs, if you have work that you need to work with legislators, try and begin the work at the beginning of an election cycle, so that by the time it's mid, and Patrick, coming from Kenya, we start campaign the day the president is sworn in. So the first, we are on campaign mode most of the time. But if we begin our work within the first few years of an election cycle, maybe we may be able to process legislation and policy or issues that need the attention of legislators before the next election cycle. The other way I see as a solution, and I am challenged by Cameroon and Uganda that seem to have embraced it, is a sense of institutionalizing channels of interactions. If you have a channel that's already existing in parliament, for example, just like Cameroon now has, it won't matter then that an election happened. It would only matter that maybe a different person will be spearheading the process. So I think for the rest of the countries in Africa, that's a challenge to us to begin to work towards having that kind of interaction so that there's continuity beyond people and it becomes a process that is embraced by an institution, so to speak. We have parliamentary committees, for example, but parliamentary committees may not do the work of such forums like the caucuses or Friends of Road Safety, because parliamentary committees engage themselves with matters, wider transport matters, aircraft matters, airline matters, railways, the port, the ships, and therefore road safety and transport might not get the attention that it deserves. So that's one way. The other way of dealing with it is in the framing of our issues. Now, this is from the NGO perspective. Sometimes we haven't been able to frame our issues in such a way that road safety is aligned with other development agenda. Because road safety is a cross-cutting matter. It cuts through gender, it cuts through health, it cuts through environment, it cuts through. So if we are able to align and to frame our issues in such a way that there's so many processes in parliament to do with education, for example. Now we are having the COVID agenda. And there's a way in which the interactions between our discourse in road safety and the discourse with COVID, whether it is social distancing, whether it is many other things that we can draw parallels from. So if we begin to frame our issues better, I think we will begin to start removing the challenges that there are, so that we are not too segmented, and the legislators don't feel overwhelmed by the many different NGOs approaching them with the very different small pockets of the same issue. If you look at it clearly, you realize that actually we are talking about the same things. The other thing is about capacity. I think if we, on both sides, are open to building of capacity, grasping issues, understanding what's going on from best practice, what is going on from the international perspective, what is going on from the national and even the local perspective, we'll be able to work better. And I say this again and again, we all want the same results. I had discovered we actually all want the same thing. We want the safety of our people, we want the safety of our constituents. So if we are able to do that, then we'll begin to start bridging those gaps. And finally is the approach. If we improve and we become more diplomatic other than more acoustic. Let's, as NGOs, from where I sit, let's not attack. Let's not always have the attack perspective, but collaboration, diplomacy, and understanding of the issue and sharing of our issues. I think if we walk through with those, we will begin to start bridging the gaps that have been the issues from my perspective.
Absolutely. So I think, thank you, Bright. As we are moving towards solutions and possible ways forward. And I had alluded to Honorable Esembe that he would come in and also give his share his views on how we can try to get better relationship between the NGOs and the legislators. Honorable Esembe, in a minute, what would be the possible way forward?
Yeah. Thank you again, Patrick. And I will say in 30 seconds, I will be adopting and relying, thanking Bright for providing the answers, which I had in mind to the question you are raising. First of all, these channels of interaction, I'm happy that she's uploaded what's happening in Uganda and Cameroon. It is good that NGOs work in this way with MPs and the executive, that is the government per se, on the issue of road safety. And she's also given the strategy, diplomacy. It mustn't always be the aggressive, because most times that is the phobia government officials have towards NGOs when they come. It looks like it's about coming to attack them. But if our friends in the NGOs are more diplomatic, then I think we'll achieve greater results. I can say this because it's a bit of what we've been experiencing with our partners and NGOs here in Cameroon, and that's what I can propose as a solution going forward.
All right. So what I was saying is that we are moving towards the end of our session, but it will not be good to just finish it before we try to sum up and draw some conclusions that have come up from the few minutes that we have discussed. And in spite of the small interferences and small challenges, I think we have come up with a few things that can be taken up. So I would like to give the next few minutes to Tawia from World Bank to give us a wrap up, a conclusion, and try to lead us towards the sort of what are we saying in terms of outcome and moving forward.
Sorry, can I just make one comment? So before Tawia,
yes,
sorry,
sure.
Can we bring in the question from the parliamentarian that we have here? Galaxy S10, please. This is Mr. BI from Senegal, please.
Bonjour.
Yeah, bonjour.
Quelle est la stratégie que l'Alliance internationale des ONG et le réseau mondial des parlementaires peuvent mettre en place pour permettre aux pays africains de signer la charte pour la sécurité routière?
Okay.
Allô?
Hello, yes, sir. That question
quelle stratégie commune peuvent mener les ONG et les parlementaires pour permettre à ce que tous les pays africains ratifient la charte de la sécurité routière?
Okay, so I'm not sure I got the question very well, but I would like to give the response maybe to, I don't know whether Bright, you're able to hear that or you're able to interpret the French?
Not at all. I have
okay.
no idea what was asked.
Okay.
Patrick.
Yes.
Je peux répéter.
Asking. Okay.
The question is,
sorry, yes, Evelyn, yes. Sorry.
What strategy can the Global Alliance propose to help us have our national governments sign up to this charter? So he's asking what strategy the Global Alliance...
for the Global Alliance.
Yeah,
yes, I think that's a good question. And quickly, I think Lotte can address that quickly, and I think it's what we are started to do. Lotte, any quick comment before I invite Tawia?
Thank you. The Alliance is a facilitator for NGOs, and we're an umbrella organization for NGOs. The NGOs are independent organizations. What we can do is to encourage and inform NGOs about what the importance of ratification of a charter. But the individual strategy is really a negotiation and is the work of the individual NGO on the ground. So I think I would really like to welcome this opportunity for dialogue with the NGOs as to how we can encourage this, because as also was addressed earlier, there are only 2 countries who have ratified it. So far, there's a number of countries, I think it's 12 countries who have signed up to it. But I think it's important that we are collaborating. If this is a strategy and if this is a wish from the AU to ratification of all countries, we all need to work towards it. But we need to do that hand in hand with the governments. The NGOs can only push for it. It's the tool of the governments, and we have to remember that. And if there's no will in the government, the NGOs are not really able to do much. But maybe, Marshall, I don't know if your microphone is working now and we can hear maybe some comments from you on this. And otherwise, maybe Bright has a comment.
Yeah, I think Marshall, we still don't have the mic. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Lotte. I think what I want to do now is that we also have a bit of hearing from Tawia, and then as she draws her conclusion before we finalize the session. So it's my pleasure to welcome Tawia to draw the conclusions and wrap up this session. Ms. Tawia?
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you to all of you. This has been a very constructive and enlightening session. So just sort of listening through right from the beginning, I think the first thing that encouraged me was that it was experiences. There is an interaction between the NGOs and the parliamentarians, at least in the countries who are represented here. So that connection is there. And I guess we need to see it being built more in other countries, but there's definitely a connection. I think what I heard was from the challenges were issues around timing, around priorities, around champions, around perceptions, around the lack of continuity, and also sometimes it's very specificity of NGOs, which makes it difficult for them to engage with the parliamentarians who have a broader outlook on when they're dealing with their constituents. But on the other hand, the opportunities are quite clear, that the NGOs have the ability to raise accountability. So the parliamentarians are not only the legislators, but they're accountable to the community. And the NGOs have that link to the communities that the parliamentarians are responsible for. So there's a connection there. Then I also saw opportunities to look within the parliamentarians and see if there are NGOs, parliamentarians who have NGO backgrounds or who have connections with NGOs, not necessarily road safety, but connections with NGOs so that they understand the role that NGOs play and see how they can use that to build the network better. I also thought that it was important that NGOs get an increasing knowledge from what Bright said of how parliamentarians and how parliament works, because I think with that knowledge, then they're better able to engage with the parliamentarians and get their agenda moving forward. I really like the idea of the networks. I think the networks of parliamentarians dealing with the NGO helped to address this issue of continuity, because whilst the chairman of a group may disappear, if the group is there, then the knowledge and the history remains, and so that it can continue. So getting parliamentarians to form networks, sharing the information on the road safety, sharing the agenda beyond the one champion helps to allow for continuity later. And I think that came out, which was really important. Using the knowledge of the election cycle, how can they be more strategic? Realizing that the election cycle is very much an important agenda, and if you want some things done, they need to be done within a certain time frame. How can we be more strategic about how we use the time frames to get the NGO agendas met? And then framing road safety to align with other agendas, the climate change agenda, issues around agenda around security rather than just safety, around mobility and transport. How do we build the road safety agendas more strongly into these agenda, which gives the MPs again a much stronger area and a much broader handle to deal with, and to able to bring the road safety agenda to the forefront. So those are the opportunities. So what I saw as sort of the concrete things that sort of came out was the issue of the Road Safety Charter. The Road Safety Charter is only only comes into force in Africa if 15 countries ratify it. As of now, there are, I believe, we are actually up to about 7 now, but some of them are in the process of having their papers, what they call the note verbal, sent through the embassies to the AU. So we are improving in the numbers, but it's important to get to that all-important number of 15, which then forces governments to be committed to what is in the Road Safety Charter, and then it gives both the parliamentarians and the NGOs a lever on which to push the agenda within their governments. So I was thinking that the visibility and the ratification of the Road Safety Charter could be one of the concrete agendas that the NGOs and the parliamentarians work on together. So how do you build capacity jointly? And the second issue is building capacity jointly. What do the parliamentarians need to know more about road safety that the NGOs can provide? What information can they provide? Are there opportunities to do joint webinars at country level where they discuss the issues of road safety? How do the NGOs provide information to the parliamentarians to build their case as they need to do so? Then I also heard compromise, collaboration, partnership. How do you strengthen this relationship between yourselves and the NGO? You have the same, as Bright said, you have the same objective, making roads safer for people, saving lives, improving the lives of the communities that you are dealing with at each level. How do you make sure that the relationship is more constructive and that NGOs do hold Parliament to account? That is their job, but they do it in a constructive way, and that they find a way of working together to push their agenda forward. So I think those are the sort of points that I got out from our discussion, from the discussion, the fruitful and rich discussion. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to round up and summarize on it.
Absolutely, thank you so much, Ms. Tawia. And I think you have drawn, I didn't know that we talked that much. You know, there was a lot that came out, but maybe that is quite well being summarized. And I would like, as we said in the beginning, we are trying to, of course, improve and make stronger relationships so that we are able to drive the road safety action in Africa together, and making sure that we have meaningful engagement, and that's the key. So as a way of trying to summarize and look at how we are feeling so far from this session, and hoping that we'll have more of these sessions, I'd like us to take a quick poll as we conclude, and you tell us, I think Liz, you can bring up the poll. The poll, how optimistic are you that legislators and NGOs together in Africa can drive road safety action? Okay, I think we can share the results of the poll, Liz. Okay. Yes, I think very optimistic. Together we will make a difference. Yeah, I think it's evident that I think we are on the right direction, and this is the first step towards, I think, greater things to come. And I just want to urge us all to remain optimistic, and also to know that I think we have to make small steps one at a time. We may be looking for bigger things, but I think we can achieve this by moving step by step. And this is just the beginning of the first step towards that. And therefore, I want, first of all, to give a vote of thanks, but I'll give Lotte just 1 minute in the end to just say, to bid you all bye. First, I want to begin by acknowledging and thanking our legislators, because this has been a first. And therefore, I cannot underemphasize the fact that we are very happy and grateful to you for finding time to actually join us, knowing the hard times because of COVID and all that, and you're able to join online, and you are able to give us your perspective and to engage our NGOs and all other attendees. Thank you very much. I want also to thank WHO for helping us in mobilizing the legislators. Thank you, Evelyn. And also all the organizers, the planners of this event. And I think most important of all is all the attendees from Africa and from all corners of the world. I could see we are joined from people from different continents. And especially the members of the African chapter. It's a big thank you to you for actually urging us and pushing us towards this kind of engagement. And this is what we are looking for. We Global Alliance would enable, but you have to come up with what is it that we can help you to do. So we shall try to do more. And I think we'll be coming out with a summary of these deliberations or this meeting soon to see what's the way forward, as Tawia has very well summarized it, and to use this as a better document to improve for better engagement in the coming future. So I don't have any much to say right now, but to ask Lotte to close for us.
Yeah.
Lotte, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to be short because we're 2 minutes past time here. But thank you very much for all of you for joining. To Bright and to Marshall, I know you had some difficulties with your microphone, but you have provided us with a lot of inputs in preparation for this, so which has been taken into this, but also to Honourable Esembe and Honourable Asta, thank you very much for joining us here, and Honourable Ruhunda from Uganda, thank you very much. I want to thank Evelyn also, because without you we wouldn't really have been able to put this together, and also to Tawia Addo-Ashong from the World Bank for sort of being our outside person who come in and listen to what we are saying and summarizing it so well. I hope that this is not that this is the first of a couple of this kind of webinars, because I think it's been far more interesting than I thought it would be. I knew we had some very talented speakers here and very enthusiastic and engaged participants, but I think there's so many things that came out here. And when we go back and listen back, we will sort of pinpoint where there are areas that we could start a discussion. And I think, for example, around the Africa Charter could be a very, very interesting one, but I think there's many more. We're also quite keen on understanding what meaningful engagement of road safety NGOs, what that looked like, and maybe understanding a little bit better what examples there are to be drawn. So I think that could also be an interesting session to do. So thank you very much to all of you. And then last but not least, thank you for all the participants for being so active and engaged. We sense a lot of interest from you. And then of course to the team, to Patrick for stepping in here last moment and being such a good moderator, to Barbara for all the preparation, to Liz for being in the background. So thank you all of you and have a nice day. Thanks for joining.